Next part, we're going to build the brush end right here. Brush end. And this one's going to be maybe a little simpler. It's going to start off maybe a little more complicated. We're going to start off with a cylinder. Okay. I don't want to build it in this viewport though, because it's going to be oriented this way. I could rotate it. It just feels awkward to me. You could come in here and rotate it, and let's see, rotate it around the z-axis, 90 degrees. Okay, 90. It's not how I personally think. If this is how you think, this is fine. Make sure you're typing nice round numbers in here and not just free rotating it though, trying to get just perfect. Okay. Instead, I'm gonna actually create it in the left menu. Okay, L for left. I'm going to make a cylinder about the right size, and I don't care about the depth right now, and this gets me the right orientation sort of from the beginning. It's just how I create it. It is not necessarily the only way to do it. So I'm going to make this about the right height. Put this here. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to give it 8 side segments, okay. An octagon, 2 cap segments, and I'll show you why here in a second, and I think 4. Go with 4 height segments. We can always add more. This will be good to start with though. Okay. So, looks good. Right click, what we always do, convert to editable poly right here. Okay. And before we make our reference object, we need to do some work to this. I'm going to right click on it and do isolate selection. This is a really nice way of getting an object alone so that there's nothing else, there's no clutter around it, and we can just modify the object by itself. Okay, so we're trying to maintain quads, right? That's sort of one of our goals. 4-sided shapes. Okay, and this is almost all 4-sided shapes, except here. These are 3-sided shapes. These are triangles. Okay, they're not really going to do us any harm, but it's sort of useful to get in that habit and learn the techniques of getting rid of 3 and 5 and 6 and 7-sided shapes and figuring that out. Okay, it takes some practice. It takes some practice to see it. This one's pretty easy though. We made an 8-sided shape. Okay, we're going to delete this center vertex. Okay, so we have an empty hole. We're going to delete the opposite one too while we're at it. Okay. And we're going to use bridge, edge selection, the 2 key. We're going to use bridge and select opposite edges. Click the bridge. Okay. We're left with these 2 holes, which we can fill with border and cap. Border and cap. Okay. So this looks a little wonky, but it is all 4-sided objects. And if you really wanted to, you could rotate this so that this is flat on top. Doesn't really bother me. Okay, this is more just about seeing the geometry and learning how to convert it. We're going to do the exact same thing here. Bridge, and then border, cap, border, cap. Okay, so this is what we're going to start with. Back to our front view, right click, end isolate, and we can start shaping our object. Okay, I'm going to put this one down here on this broomstick. I'm going to make a reference just like before. Yep. Okay. And put that right there. And the same thing as before. I'm going to put a turbo smooth on it with 2 iterations. So I can now manipulate this and see what happens. I can hit the G key to turn the grid off. It makes it a little nicer. So let's come into our edge selection, double click, And let's try decreasing this scale. You want to be careful when you're doing this not to do what I just did here, not to turn it into an oval. Okay, so when you take your scale tool, you want to make sure it's either all yellow or yellow on the correct axes. Okay, so I'll do something like that. Okay, basically we need to select all those faces and move that up. Okay, move this up here. Okay. And so it's a little sort of lopsided. That's okay. We can sort of give it a ridge effect if we want. But let's get the sizes about right. So this one, right click, and I want to increase its size everywhere. So I click this inner triangle, select, okay. Okay, that looks pretty good actually for right now. Let's do that same thing that we did before. Let's object properties see-through. Just give us a better idea of what's going on back here. Okay, so the middle looks pretty good. We need to fix the front and the back. We'll start with the front here. We want it to be straight. I'm gonna move this off for a second. We want it to be straight, almost the same radius, then start to flare out after these metal bands, which we're going to make next. Okay, so how can we make it straight and then flare? Well, we can come here, we can add a swift loop down here, and then if we go straight to move and edge, the 2 key, we can scooch this down. So that is the effect of being almost flat and then flaring up. Okay, and it matches pretty well, I'd say. Okay, I'm happy with the front now. You see, it looks sort of awkward here, but in the end, it ends up nice and smooth, and that's what we want. Okay, so how do we fix the end to look like the tip of a broom? Well, we're not going to go and add the sort of crazy bristles. It's sort of beyond the scope of this project. But we can come here and select the whole end cap, and let's scale it down a bit and see how it looks. Okay, so we see I moved that ring off the end, and the result is a sort of a flat but still rounded tip here. You do a little adjustment. Okay, and you might find in this case, like, I decreased the size maybe a little too much. Come back to our scale. Come back a bit. Okay, so small changes. That's the name of the game here. Small changes. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's get out of selection. Move this so that it's centered on the broom handle here, and what we got so far is pretty good. Let's select these two. Control click, isolate selection. Oh. Okay, I'm happy with this. This is coming together nicely. Okay, end isolation. So next thing we're gonna do are the bands here in the middle, and figure out how to do those here in a second.